What should we be expecting from this Titans offense this season from a statistical perspective? Can Cam Ward become the first passer in the Tennessee Titans history to throw for 4,000 yards in a single season? And can he do that as a rookie? How many touchdowns, how many interceptions should we be expecting? And what about the rest of the offense, the running backs, the receivers, the tight ends? Today, I am projecting out what the Titans' statistical output might look like for 2025, looking at three versions of the offense. A conservative approach, where the Titans' offense is bad yet again. A realistic approach, where the Titans' offense is about middle of the road, and an aggressive approach where the Titans have a top 10 offense in the NFL. What would each player's stats look like in each of those three circumstances? We're going to go through it today. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver on here today with a solo podcast projecting out the Tennessee Titans offensive statistics for the 2025 season. Now, if you remember, I did this exercise last year. I was actually fairly close in a lot of areas. I nailed the Titans' yards per play for the entire season. I was pretty close in total yards, pretty close in total completions, just 3 completions off, 1 off of passing touchdowns, pretty close on the rushing offense. A lot of my projections from last year came in, again, fairly close. Obviously, I'm not looking to be exact here, but I feel like I have a fairly good handle on the formula for calculating out what these numbers might look like, and last year's exercise is a good representation of that. The caveat is I'm projecting 3 different sets of numbers, right? So we have the conservative approach, which is based on a scenario where the Titans offense is not that good. What would the statistical output look like in a season where the Titans offense struggles, which we know they did last season? I have the realistic approach, which is what I'm expecting the Titans offense to look like if they were a middle of the road, middle of the pack level offense, which feels about where they should be, assuming they take the step forward that we are projecting them to take, that they need to take if Brian Callahan wants to have another season as the Titans head coach. And then we have the aggressive approach. This is the scenario where it all comes together for this Titans offense, and they end up a top 10 unit in the NFL in almost every offensive metric. So with those 3 different approaches, I was able to project out where the Titans 2024 offense landed, and that was with my conservative, the Titans have a bad offense approach. So while I feel good about my ability to project these numbers, I do have a lot of leeway because I'm looking at it from 3 different scenarios where, the offense is good or bad. And the idea is to figure out what these numbers might look like. So I'm taking a very mathematical approach to these numbers. If you are tuning into this as an audio listener only, of course, we appreciate you tuning in. This might be the time for you to hop over to the YouTube channel at Music City Audible Podcast on YouTube, youtube.com/at Music City Audible Podcast, because I'm going through a lot of numbers and I'm just going to be reading these numbers off of my spreadsheets. And if you're only listening, it might be hard to keep up, but if you're looking at it on screen as I go through it, it'll be a lot easier. So I will also say that with all the math involved in this approach, I'd like to explain how I came up with these numbers, but I don't want to bog down the video. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to run through my projections at the start of this video. If that's all you tuned in for, great. It'll be here right at the beginning for you. And then I'll continue on explaining sort of the philosophy behind it, how these numbers are calculated a little bit after that. And I'll end this video by giving you a little bit of a walkthrough tutorial on how to project these numbers out for yourself, because just some background on how it works. It's all based on what I call determinants, determining factors. You plug in things like plays per game, pass rate, catch percentage for the wide receivers, yards per catch, and it spits out all the rest of the numbers for you. So basically, I'll walk you through what numbers you should be plugging in, where to plug those in, how the spreadsheet works. So if you want to make your own projections based on your own idea of whatever circumstances you foresee happening this season, you'll have the ability to do so. So that'll be the end of the video. But let's start by just running through the numbers themselves. This is the output behind my projections. We're going to start with the conservative approach. So this approach puts the Titans at just over 5,000 total yards of offense at 60.5 plays per game. Now, last season, those numbers would have ranked 30th in total offensive yards, 26th in plays per game, 28th in yards per play at 4.9 yards per play. That's actually a tenth of a yard less per play than the offense had last season. 48 sacks taken, and Cam Ward's numbers, I think what everyone tuned in here to probably see, unless you're just a complete diehard fan like me and you want to know about the entire offense, Cam Ward's numbers. So I've got him at 62.0% completion percentage, 6.7 yards per attempt, 34 passing yards. That would have been 31st in the NFL last year. 18 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and 48 sacks taken, as I said. I also projected him for 254 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Again, this is the Titans have a bad offense scenario. So 18 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. As good as we all hope Cam Ward can be, we must acknowledge that it's within the realm of possibility that he struggles this season and throws nearly as many interceptions as touchdowns. The interceptable passes stat that you've probably heard about Cam Ward is a real thing. He's an aggressive gunslinger. He likes to take chances, try to fit the ball into windows down the field, and he doesn't like to check it down all that often. So if everything goes wrong, 15 interceptions is well within the possibility. 18 touchdowns feels low. There would have been one team that had fewer passing touchdowns in the NFL in 2024, so it would have been the 32nd. Obviously, there's 33 teams in this sample because there's the 32 teams from last year and this projection. So 32nd in passing touchdowns. Look, we've seen it in the preseason already. The Titans want to run the ball. They want to run the ball in the red zone. Cam Ward didn't throw a touchdown in the preseason. Now, granted, he only played, 5 drives, 6 drives, something like that. So it's understandable. It's a small sample size. But I could see a pathway unfolding this season where they run the ball a lot, especially when they get in close. And Cam Ward could have a fine season as a quarterback of a team and only end up with 18 passing touchdowns. So this is very much within the realm of possibility. The Bears only had 20 passing touchdowns last year in a very dysfunctional offense. The Patriots only threw 18 passing touchdowns last year. The Giants only had 15 passing touchdowns last year. So don't tell me 18 can't happen. Obviously, we would hope it's more, but this is the conservative approach. The rest of these numbers are sort of a dart throw, shot in the dark, educated guess, I would call it, because we don't know how the running back workload's going to end up being split up, especially with Tyjae Spears going on injured reserve to start the season, missing at least the first 4 games. And we don't know how these wide receiver snaps are going to be divided up. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Van Jefferson, we expect them to be the starters in week 1. Will Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson still be starting in week 5? Tyler Lockett might be, but I could totally see a world where Alec Iamanair takes the 3rd starting receiver spot from Van Jefferson at some point in this season. No idea when that'll be. No idea how much they'll rotate. Just because one guy's starting doesn't mean they're not all playing a bunch of snaps. So this is very much dart throw, as I said, educated guess on how the receiver and running back workload and tight end workload. Gunnar Helm, promising rookie. Historically, rookie tight ends don't contribute a whole lot. We've seen that changing over the past few years with guys like, Kyle Pitts had a historic rookie season, has fallen off a bit since. Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride. There's these young rookie tight ends have been having an impact on the game. So we don't know if Gunnar Helm is going to fall into the more historical category with Chigakonkwo on the depth chart ahead of him for the time being, or will Gunnar Helm be one of those surprise rookies who surpasses Okonkwo on the depth chart at some point, takes receiving snaps away from him? We just don't know. So again, I feel pretty good about my Cam Ward numbers. I feel pretty good about my total offense numbers, how the running back totals will shake out. But as far as individual statistics, this is very much a crapshoot. That said, I've got Tony Pollard carrying the ball 282 times for 1,130 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns to go along with 35 catches, 174 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Tyjae Spears getting up to 89 rush attempts in what we're assuming is going to be 13 games, assuming he doesn't get hurt again or miss more than 4 weeks with this injury that he's already dealing with, the sprained ankle. So 89 carries for 331 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns to go along with 24 catches, 167 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. Calvin Ridley, I feel decently good about my Calvin Ridley projection. He's the only receiver I feel decently good about. I've got him in this scenario at 86 catches for 1,158 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. Remember, Cam Ward in this scenario only throws 18. Ridley having 4. Sounds like a low number for him, but historically, he hasn't been a huge touchdown scorer in his career, and in this conservative approach, the touchdowns just get divided up nicely between everybody, so I gave him 4 touchdowns. I also have Ridley with 8 carries for 54 yards. He had a handful of carries last season. He actually ended last season with 8 carries for 55 yards, so He was used a little bit in the run game. I do expect that role to go maybe more to a guy like Chimere Dike this year. So I have Chimere Dike projected for more rushing attempts, but I do still have 8 carries for 54 yards projected out for Calvin Ridley for this season. Tyler Lockett, I've got 36 catches, 416 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Van Jefferson, 17 catches, 206 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Alec Iamaner, I have projected slightly higher than Van Jefferson. I have him in this scenario. Let's say Alec Iamaner takes over the starting role like week 8 or so. I've got him at 24 catches for 319 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. That'd be a pretty good rookie season for a 4th-round wide receiver on one of the worst offenses in the league. Wide receiver Chimere Dike, I do not project a very large role for him in the offense this season in any of my 3 scenarios. Obviously, the numbers are the lowest here. 7 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown. 11 rush attempts, 74 rushing yards. And in this scenario, 13 targets. So only 2 more targets than rush attempts. I do feel like if he's not used a lot in the passing game as go run around and see if you can get open kind of guy, I do think he could be used as sort of a design touch guy, about 1 per game, maybe 1.5 per game. And here I've got him projected in total for 24 touches, so a little more than 1 per game. Bryce Oliver, I don't have a lot of projection for Bryce Oliver. He's currently wide receiver 6. He's probably not going to play that much, but I've got 15 targets, 9 catches, 113 yards, and 1 touchdown for Bryce Oliver. Chig Okonkwo and the tight ends. I have Chig projected for 47 catches, 455 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. That's pretty in line with where he was at last year. It's a little less receiving yards, but with the Gunnar Helm target competition coming in and this being, again, the bad offense scenario, I think that that's a realistic starting point for him. Gunnar Helm, I have 17 catches, 207 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So fairly small role for Gunnar Helm, about 1 catch a game based on these projections, but that'll change as we get into the other approaches. All other receivers, and this, there aren't any other receivers on the roster, but if somebody gets injured and a Xavier Restrepo gets elevated, or they sign somebody else or trade for somebody, which I don't expect, but you never know. I have a very small target share plugged in, 10 total targets plugged in for the all other receivers category, 6 catches, 61 yards. All other running backs, Kalel Mullings, Julius Chestnut, they might get some run in the first 4 games of the season. They might have some short yardage attempts coming up some point in the year, Kalel Mullings especially. So I've got them in for 24 total carries, 71 yards. That's only 3 yards per carry, but again, this might be a designed short yardage role where the yards per carry comes down because you're only trying to get 1 or 2 yards in those situations. And then all other tight ends, which right now would be David Martin Robinson, but who knows if anyone gets, elevated or signed or what could happen over the course of a season. I've got David Martin Robinson / all other tight ends in for 6 catches for 39 yards. So that's it. That's the conservative approach. Again, I would like to talk through the philosophy behind where these numbers come from, but I want to get all the stats out first. So we'll come back to that in a moment. Let's move on to what I'm calling realistic approach. This is the Titans have the 14th best offense by total yards. Here with this approach, what might those stats look like? Well, it's 62 plays per game, so it's a little faster paced offense. It's either converting more 3rd downs, or the defense is getting more stops, or they're simply moving faster, running a faster tempo, and able to run more plays. So I've got them at 5,655 total yards. Again, that's 14th in the NFL. 5.4 yards per play would have been 17th in the NFL last season. 41 total sacks taken. Getting to the Cam Ward numbers again here, I've got him down in this realistic projection, which again has the Titans at 14th in total yards in the NFL. I have him throwing for 3,926 yards. That would have been 19th most passing yards last season. That's pretty good. It's not quite 4,000. It is a hair shy though, and if he can do this fairly easily, this isn't like a magical season by any stretch. This is an average of 230.9 passing yards per game. Now, that's a good number. That's a great number for a rookie. We would take this season from Cam Ward, absolutely. And that's why it is the quote-unquote realistic projection. Completion percentage here, I've got him at 63% completion. I know that's a little low, but I will explain when we get, as we get into the video. 24th, that would have ranked in the NFL last season. I have him at 25 touchdowns and 14 interceptions in this scenario. So 4 fewer interceptions, 7 more touchdowns than the conservative approach. And in this scenario, I gave him 287 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Tony Pollard, his numbers are about the same as what they were in the last scenario. His rush attempts actually go down, even though the Titans' total plays run went up. I also shifted the pass percentage and run percentage so that they are a more pass-happy offense in this realistic approach. So Tony Pollard's carry number actually went down from 282 to 276. However, his yards per carry increased in this scenario. So he was at 1130 rushing yards in the conservative approach. I've now got him at 1158 total rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. That's 1 more than the other scenario. 39 catches, 214 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Tajay Spears, again, the rush attempts go down a little bit, but the yards per carry come up. So in this scenario, 87 rush attempts instead of 89, 341 rushing yards. That's 10 more than the conservative approach. And again, 3 rushing touchdowns for Pollard here. I've also got him at 26 catches for 191 receiving yards and a touchdown. Calvin Ridley in this scenario, I took his receiving target share down by 1 percentage point in this scenario and gave it to, I believe, Alec Ayamaner, the rookie, because I believe somewhat the receiver splits, if the Titans offense is really bad, it probably means that the rookie receivers aren't getting in the game as quickly, or they aren't picking up the offense as fast, or they're not contributing as much, and the Titans are forced to rely more on Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson, thus resulting in an offense that's not as good. If these receivers pick things up quickly and prove to be contributing members of the offense, the Titans offense is probably a little better. So in this scenario, I shifted the target shares around quite a bit, taking them down for Tyler Lockett and especially for Van Jefferson, and adding them to guys like Alec Ayamaner and Gunnar Helm. I did give Chimere Dike a higher target share, although it's still not very high. I still don't see him being a massive part of the offense this season. Could be wrong. Again, this is all very much educated guess. So anyway, in this scenario, Calvin Ridley gets 155 targets. That comes out to 91 catches for 1,271 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. Still 8 rush attempts, 56 rushing yards. Tyler Lockett, I've taken his targets down to 39 targets, 28 catches for 326 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Van Jefferson comes down even more, 22 targets, just 13 catches for 158 receiving yards. And you can do the math, 17 games, 13 catches. That's fewer than 1 catch per game. That might be like 2 or 3 catches per game for the first 4 weeks, and then it goes to 1 or 0 for the rest of the season as Alec Ayamaner takes over. I have Van Jefferson with 1 receiving touchdown. And speaking of Alec Ayamaner, I've bumped him up to 36 catches compared to 24 in the conservative approach. He now is at 492 receiving yards compared to 319 in the conservative approach, and 3 receiving touchdowns compared to 2 in the other approach. That's a great season for a 4th-round rookie there. Chimere Dike, this time I have 22 targets, 12 catches for 195 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Only 10 rush attempts because, again, the run-pass ratio changed. So while his rushing share stayed the same, his rush attempts actually went down by 1, but 10 carries for 78 rushing yards. Bryce Oliver, 17 targets, 10 catches, 130 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Chig Okonkwo in this scenario has his best season of his career with 72 targets, 53 catches, 515 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. Gunnar Helm has a pretty solid rookie year for a 4th-round tight end who's not even really the tight end one. 25 catches, 310 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. All other receivers, 7 catches, 71 yards. All other backs, 23 carries for 80 rushing yards. And all other tight ends, 6 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown in this scenario. So good job, David Martin Robinson, finding the end zone. That's the realistic approach. And again, I'd love to explain the philosophy behind it, and I will. But before I do that, let's get to the aggressive approach. This is the scenario where the Titans have a top 10 offense. Everything's clicking. Everything works. The Titans win more games than people expect, or the defense is so bad, but the offense makes up for it in this scenario. And the Titans are better than people think. Cam Ward, we are 100% sure, is the answer. It's a CJ Stroud, it's a Jaden Daniels, or a Justin Herbert, or a Baker Mayfield even level rookie season. The kind that gives you the confidence that this guy could sign his second contract now if he was eligible. But obviously that won't happen. So what do those numbers actually look like? Plays per game, again, increase in this scenario. Total yards, I have the Titans at 6,228 total yards. That would have been 9th most in the NFL last season. 8th in total plays, 10th in yards per play at 5.8 yards per play, 13th fewest sacks taken in this scenario at 37 sacks. And I haven't really been talking about the rushing offense, but in this scenario, they're a top 13 rushing offense and a top 5 passing offense. Cam Ward, under this scenario, 4,390 passing yards. That would have been 5th in the NFL last season. 31 touchdowns against 10 interceptions. 31 touchdowns would have been the 6th highest or 6th the most in the NFL last year. 10 interceptions would have been the 11th fewest. So a pretty great season from Cam Ward here. Again, 37 sacks. That would have been the 13th fewest taken in the NFL last year. I do have his completion percentage still at 64.4%, which is still kind of a bit low. 19th, that would have been in the NFL last year. And in this scenario, I've got him at 323 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So this is the dream season for Cam Ward. Again, 5th in the NFL in passing yards, at least compared to last year's numbers. 6th in passing touchdowns. A 4,000-yard, 30-touchdown season would be incredible. And there's room for this to be even better. Obviously, there's like a margin of error on either side of all these projections. But this isn't even best offense in the NFL. Like, this is realistically attainable. I don't want to call it realistic because you should never go into a season expecting a rookie quarterback on, coming into what was one of the worst offenses in the NFL last season, turning them into a top 5 or top 2 offense. Even a top 10 offense like this projection is a bit of a stretch, but it's realistically attainable if everything goes right. This is probably the ceiling for what Cam Ward's numbers would look like. Nearly 4,400 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. In this scenario, I've got Tony Pollard at 1,185 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. I've got Tajay Spears at 350 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Calvin Ridley has a huge season, 96 catches on 160 targets for 1,386 receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns. Still got him at 8 rushing attempts, but for 59 rushing yards. Tyler Lockett, 24 catches for 284 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, his target share is coming down. Van Jefferson's target share is coming down to almost non-existent. I've now got him at 9 catches for 112 yards in this scenario because Alec Manor becomes a true key cog of this offense. I've got him in now at 46 catches for 556 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. If Manor has over 500 receiving yards as a rookie 4th rounder, he will have accomplished something that not many day 3 rookie receivers accomplish. And so this would be a tremendously successful season for him, even if you think 556 receiving yards isn't like that many. Like, he's not a fantasy football starter by any means, but this would be a great season for him. Chimere Dike, I've got getting involved a little bit more in the offense now, up to 36 targets in this projection, 20 receptions, 323 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns to go along with 10 carries for 81 rushing yards. Bryce Oliver, 11 catches, 146 yards, and a touchdown. Chig Okonkwo in this scenario, 57 catches, 572 receiving yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns to go along with Gunnar Helms, 32 catches, 404 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. So good seasons for both of those guys as they sort of combine to form an elite tight end one in terms of what their numbers look like, but both guys contributing to the offense in this scenario. And then the all other receivers, 7 catches, 80 yards, all other backs, 22 carries, 81 rushing yards, all other tight ends, 7 catches, 48 yards, and that receiving touchdown. Those are the numbers, the raw numbers. It's a lot of numbers I just threw at you. I'd like to explain where those numbers come from on the other side of this break, because first I'm going to tell you about Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, has been serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. Ask the staff about what kind of drinks you're trying to make. Are you throwing a party? What is everyone going to like? This is an extremely knowledgeable staff that will help you pick out the perfect beverage of your choice. They're also on Uber Eats, which means you can have everything you need delivered right to your front door without having to leave the comfort of your house. If you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website, you can join the In Crowd. This is an exclusive, free-to-join membership program that Sinkers Beverages has, and In Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. All right, we're going to go through this now. Philosophically, where did these numbers come from? So I'm starting back at the conservative approach, and now I'll kind of talk through where I came up with all these numbers. So plays per game, let's start there. Everything starts with plays per game, because the more plays you run, the more stats you're going to pile up. The fewer plays you run, the fewer stats you're going to pile up, right? And it's all sort of an equation that calculates your plays per game by your yards per play. And that includes, that incorporates completion percentage, rushing attempts, yards per carry, yards per catch, which informs yards per pass attempt. So we'll get into more specifics as I explain how to actually work this sheet for yourself. But just looking at it now, plays per game, 60.5, pass percentage, 58.0. Last year, the Titans ran 60.7 plays per game, and they called a drop back pass on 59.99% of plays. So this scenario actually is a lower pass percentage than last year by a considerable amount, which I think is a scenario we should at least look at and discuss. And that's why it is the conservative approach. But there's a world where the Titans lean more heavily on the run game this year than they did last year. They've upgraded the offensive line. They're in the second year of Bill Callahan's running system and Brian Callahan's offensive system. And they have a rookie quarterback that they might want to take some pressure off of, because although they tried to do that with Will Levis last year, they couldn't do it very well because they didn't have a good offensive line. So within a conceivably upgraded offensive line, they may be able to lean on the run game a little more. So I dropped their pass percentage down a bit for this projection. It's going to go up in the next two projections, but for this one, it is actually lower than last season. And plays per game is slightly lower than last season. Look, the Titans might have a terrible defense that can't get off the field, which wouldn't allow the offense to run very many plays per game. They have a rookie quarterback who may struggle to convert on third downs, although he didn't do that at all in college. He was the best in the nation at converting third downs last season. You never know how it's going to translate to the NFL. So we're projecting it to see what it would look like here. And in this scenario, I gave Cam Ward a 3.5% touchdown percentage and a 3% interception percentage. And that's where the passing touchdowns and the interceptions that get spit out of this calculation come from, is you just plug in a touchdown percentage and an interception percentage. And if you're curious where those numbers would have ranked last season, touchdown percentage of 3.5 would have been the 28th highest touchdown percentage, so not very high. And 3.0 interception percentage would have been the 28th lowest, so a pretty bad interception. The lower your interception percentage, the fewer interceptions you're throwing. And that simply means touchdown percentage to interception percentage simply means touchdowns per pass attempt, essentially. On what percentage of your pass attempts are you throwing a touchdown? On what percentage of your pass attempts are you throwing an interception? So with a 3.5% touchdown and a 3% interception, those are both 28th best in terms of whether it's good or bad, 28th best in the NFL based on last year's stats. So we're starting at a very conservative point. He's throwing, more interceptable balls than most people, and he's not throwing as many touchdowns. And that's also based on what I said before about how the Titans might decide to be very run heavy in the red zone and not allow him those opportunities for as many touchdowns. With the workload split, I gave Tony Pollard 60% of the carries, which is more than he had last season, despite Brian Callahan saying he wants to have a better balance between Pollard and Spears. But Spears is missing at least 4 games, and his injury history suggests that he might get hurt again at some point in the season. So I don't know. This is, again, a shot in the dark, but I gave Tony Pollard 60% of the carries. I think that that's a realistic place for him to be. If he's only at 50%, his numbers won't be as good as they are in these projections, but I think I would count that as sort of, within the range of outcomes that I'm predicting here. And in the conservative projection, I only have him at 4.0 yards per carry. That is lower than where he was at last season when he had 4.2 yards per carry, but this is a conservative approach where things aren't going as well. Tajay Spears, 19% rushing share. Now that's fairly in line with what he had last season. He had 18.67% of the rushing share last year. So that's kind of where that number came from. He's already missing 4 games, but it's still slightly higher than the percentage of carries he took last season. And 3.7 yards per carry in this projection is the yards per carry average that Spears had last season too. Calvin Ridley, I gave him a 29% target share. That's crazy high. I think there are maybe only 4 receivers in the NFL with a higher target share last season. But Cam Ward has shown to have a connection with Calvin Ridley. They've talked nonstop about how much they respect and like each other. And he's by far the best receiver on this offense. So could he get peppered with targets to the point where he's one of the highest target share guys in the NFL, top 5? I think so. I really do think so. So I started at 29%. In the next 2 scenarios, I took that down 1 percentage point for each scenario, just as other guys get more involved and the offense is more, I would say well-rounded. There's more rookies contributing, more playmakers in general contributing. But in this conservative approach, Calvin Ridley is getting the lion's share of the targets, 13.5 yards per catch. So basically you plug in the target share, you plug in the catch percentage, and you plug in the yards per reception. You plug in the receiving touchdown share, the rushing share, the yards per carry, and the rushing touchdown percentage, and that spits out all the rest of his numbers based on what I plugged in for Cam Ward, plays per game, pass percentage, all that. It all comes together and spits out these numbers. So 58% catch percentage. Last season, Calvin Ridley had a catch percentage of 53.3%, and catch percentage is literally just percentage of targets that you catch. Obviously, we know he had one of the highest uncatchable target rates in the NFL last year, so I brought his catch percentage up quite a bit from the 53.3, but 58 still not that high. That would indicate there's a lot of downfield targets and less, easy like screen passes, quick passes, the kind that you would expect to be completed at a high rate. There's more of the low percentage throws in there to get to a 58% catch percentage. For comparison, I have Tyler Lockett at 71%. Expect Tyler Lockett to be more of a safety valve underneath, security blankets, out of the slot, running sort of, those mesh drag routes, quick little sit routes, option routes over the middle of the field or to the outside. So I have him at a much higher catch percentage, and I gave him 10% of the target share. I feel like this is getting really long. You guys can see the numbers on screen here, and you can see how they change as we go to the next version of the offense, which is the realistic approach. Now, the plays per game goes up to 62, pass percentage goes up to 60, and some target share stuff changes here too. I also bumped everybody's rushing yards per carry up a little bit. Everyone's receiving yards per carry up a little bit. Everyone's catch percentage gets bumped a tiny bit. And I really played with the target share and the touchdown share in this scenario to give Elikiah Manor and Gunnar Helm specifically more opportunities, Chimere Dike a little bit more opportunity, and taking those opportunities away from Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson. For Cam Ward in this scenario, I bumped his touchdown percentage up to 4.5 and his interception percentage down to 2.5. This new projection would put him as the 13th highest touchdown percentage based on 2024 statistics and the 23rd lowest interception percentage. So we're moving in the right direction, right? They were both at 28 before. Now touchdown percentage comes up to 13. Interception percentage is still a bit higher, comes up to 23 from 28 because he's still a guy that's going to put the ball in harm's way more often than you'd like. He takes chances. He's an aggressive gunslinger type of quarterback. You're going to get more big plays out of that, but you're also going to get more turnovers. So in this projection, he still ends up with 14 interceptions, but 25 touchdowns. You live with that. If you're doing enough on offense to make up for the occasional turnover, you live with it. Will Levis, for example, wasn't doing enough to make up for the horribly timed game-losing level turnovers. It's two different worlds here, but that's why that's where these numbers, that's why the touchdowns and interceptions move, because I changed the touchdown percentage and the interception percentage. And finally, we'll look at the philosophy behind the last one, the aggressive projection. Plays per game jumps up to 63.5. Last year, the NFL average was 62.08 plays run per game on offense. The realistic approach has them at 62 plays per game, which would have been right in line with NFL average. This approach is 63.5. That is a much higher number. That puts them 8th in the NFL based on last year's stats in plays per game run. And then Cam Ward, I took his touchdown percentage all the way up to 5.25%, his interception percentage down to 1.75%. And simply by giving the Titans more plays run per game and making more of those plays passing plays, the rest of the numbers go up, right? So yes, I increased all the receivers, running backs, tight ends. I increased their average yards per reception up by, between 0.2 yards and maybe 0.5 yards. Like maybe some guys got bigger ranges of improvement from over the 3 different scenarios, but for the most part, they're all within the same little range here. All the catch percentages take a tiny step up. All the yards per catch take a tiny step up. But the biggest reason Cam Ward is throwing for so many more yards in this scenario is because the Titans ran more plays, and more of the plays that they ran are pass plays. Like, that's how simple that's what it boils down to. Can you run more plays, and how many of those plays are pass plays? Obviously, how many passes you complete, what's your average depth of target? Like, I can't even begin to project those things out. Average depth of target, how could I possibly know what Cam Ward's going to do in the NFL? But I can project out based on their sort of career averages, sort of some of the best seasons of their career, all the receivers' yards per reception, and then Cam Ward's yards per attempt is actually informed by the yards per reception of all the receivers and who gets the most targets and everything. And then Cam Ward's completion percentage is actually based on the receiver's catch percentage that I plug in. So Cam Ward only having a 64.4 completion percentage in this scenario, which is still only 19th highest in the NFL, and this is the aggressive approach, is because based on the preseason, based on the fact that we expect Cam Ward to be an aggressive quarterback who attacks down the field, I am expecting his completion percentage to be not elite, especially as a rookie. And we see this a lot with rookie passers who need to learn to take what the defense gives them, who need to learn to take the check down and take what's there, because they don't come into the NFL with that mindset, especially a guy like Cam Ward, who has openly said at the podium multiple times that he wants to be a gunslinger. So yeah, his completion percentage is a little low, but that's okay if you're still making big plays happen. If you're still throwing for 4,390 yards, as I have him doing in this scenario, then it doesn't matter if your completion percentage is only 64.4%. As long as you're above that baseline of like 61-ish percent, then you're doing just fine. So that's where those numbers come from. The touchdown percentage that I took him up to, 5.25%, would have been 11th best in the NFL last year. The interception percentage that I took him down to, 1.75%, would have been the 11th best in the NFL last year as well. So these numbers, it's fringe top 10. It's not quite top 10. Again, for a rookie to have numbers like this would be extremely impressive, but it's within the realm, as I said, realistically attainable here. Calvin Ridley, by the time we get to this aggressive projection, I've got him down to a 27% target share, but I've got his catch percentage up to 60%. So again, all that stuff informs what Cam Ward's completion percentage, yards per attempt end up being. How these guys' touchdown numbers are determined is based on the receiving touchdown share. So each guy has a receiving touchdown share plugged in based on how I think they're going to be used. Again, it's educated guesses here because you got a rookie quarterback, a lot of new pieces, only a second year play caller, head coach. Like, we don't actually know what this offense is going to look like, which makes this exercise very difficult for me. You know what I would love? I would love to get into a point with this Titans offense where I have a pretty dang good idea of what the offense is going to look like. And doing these projections gets fairly easy because there's less guesswork, because that means the Titans have had stability, continuity, and success for multiple seasons in a row that would allow me to have a more accurate gauge to predict from and to project with. But here we are. So the rookies, again, Alec Iamaner gets bumped up in target share here. Chimere Dike similarly gets bumped up, although Iamaner still has a more than double target share than DK in this projection. Gunnar Helm also has a higher target share and a higher receiving touchdown share, so he ends up with more touchdowns in this scenario. And yeah, this is an approach where the Titans offense is pretty good, top 10 in the NFL good, and that's where these numbers come from. All right, so those are my official 2025 Tennessee Titans offensive stat projections. I feel pretty confident in my Cam Ward projection, like that if the Titans offense is bad, that's what his numbers will look like. If the Titans offense is average, that's what his numbers look like. If the Titans offense is really good, that's what his numbers will look like. I feel good about those three ranges for Cam Ward. For everyone else, I don't feel good at all. I'm totally guessing. I feel okay about Calvin Ridley. I feel okay about Tony Pollard, but even those guys might see the ball less than what I have projected them to see the ball because I have them at pretty high, respective rushing and receiving shares here. But that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned after the video. I'm going to walk you through my spreadsheet, and if you want to plug in some numbers for yourself, I'll show you how to do that really quickly. Thanks again to Sinkers Beverages. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to like it, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Justin and I will be back tomorrow going through our season predictions and hot takes for the 2025 Tennessee Titans. So make sure you tune into that. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great Labor Day. Be safe. We appreciate you all for tuning in on the holiday, or if you're watching the next day, we still appreciate it. All right, that's it. Y'all stay safe out there, tighten up, all that stuff, but stay in the video here if you want to know how to work this spreadsheet. So let me pull it up here for you. All right, so here's my spreadsheet. As you can see, it looks a lot like the one I was just showing you, except all the numbers have been removed. The first thing you need to do after you click the link in the video description to find this sheet is you need to save it to your own Google Drive. So make a copy and save it to your own drive because this one is not editable. That way, you know, everyone who clicks on the link doesn't see one other person's numbers plugged in and you don't change each other's numbers. Like, it's got to be your own sheet. So make a copy and save it to your own Google Drive. And then, as I said before, everything starts with plays per game, right? And I've included some reference numbers here for you, just in case you want to look at them, what the lowest plays per game in the 2024 season was, what the highest plays per game was, and what the average was. So if you think you think my projections are too conservative, even the highest one, you could say they're going to run more plays than anyone in the NFL this year and start with a number like that. Or you can be a little more conservative. It's up to you, really. That's the whole point of this. Pass percentage, again, these are NFL low, NFL high, NFL average. Do you think the Titans will be around average? If so, then you can put in about 60%. Sack percentage, same thing here, NFL low, NFL high, NFL average. And I've also included a handy sheet tab here that just shows you what all the stats look like for the entire league last season. So if you want to know what the Titans, specifically, they're bolded here, what specifically was the Titans' sack percentage last year? Well, if you look over here, they took 52 sacks. It's right here, 8.4%. So let's say that's what you are projecting. Then you can just plug in 8.4%. If you have another number, plug it in. Again, the references are here for you. And scramble percentage, you know, you can plug in anything you want here for. It's basically the percentage of dropbacks, called passes that end in a quarterback scramble, because every dropback doesn't result in a pass. Every dropback results in either a pass, a sack, or a scramble, or a penalty, but those don't count. So there you go. Then you have more numbers to plug in here. Obviously, Cam Ward is going to get a 100% passing share unless you don't think he starts the whole season. If you want to project what would happen if he only started and took 80% of the passing share, go for it. I mean, it's probably going to be closer to like 99.8. If we're being realistic, a fake punt somewhere, a wide receiver pass last year. Tyler Boyd threw a pass. Johnny Hecker's been known to throw passes on fake punts. So this is like, what percentage of team pass attempts does Cam Ward get? I went with 100 just for because it makes sense. I'm not going to project a fake punt and then ruin my whole spreadsheet because of that. So just for, simplicity, I'm giving Cam Ward a 100%. And you can do the same thing for all the other players. So like I said, I gave Tony Pollard a 60% rushing share and Tajay Spears a 19%. You can play with this, however you want. If you look over here in the bottom right corner, you'll notice a few things. Number one, let me point out throwaway percentage. So when we talk about target share, right? I left you guys 96% of Cam Ward's pass attempts to be targeted to a receiver. That's because I gave him a 4% throwaway percentage. You can make this 6%. You can make this 2%. You don't think he's ever going to throw the ball away. But I think 4% is a realistic number you could use. And then it shows you here how much rushing share you've used, how much rushing share you have remaining. So obviously those are these two guys here. How much target share you've used, how much you have remaining. We've only put in target share for the throwaways, so that's where that 4% comes from. And then receiving touchdown share we'll get to in a second. The point is, all three of these numbers need to add up to 100. And all of these numbers need to be 0, or else your projections simply won't make sense. They won't be mathematically possible. So we'll get to that again in a second, but I wanted to point that out. So like if you think Cam Ward's going to have a 5% rushing share, well, now we're at 84%. With 60 to Pollard, 19 to Spears. All other backs could have 16%. That'd be pretty high. You could do what I did and give some of it to Ridley and Chimere Dike. See, now we got 6% left. We could give that 6% to all other backs. You could give it, 2% to Chigakonkwo if you think they're going to hand him the ball. Whatever you want to do, that's how you have to do it. But as long as these numbers are black, 100%, you're good. If they're red, then you're missing a lot. So again, you would do the same thing then with Calvin Ridley's target share. Maybe you think he just sets a record with target share or something and Lockett's barely used. Like, you can do whatever you want. Again, this number just has to add up to 100. And then for Cam Ward, touchdown percentage, interception percentage, you can plug in numbers like I did. If you go over to the outputs tab, so that's the inputs tab. You go over to the outputs tab, it's going to start calculating these numbers as soon as you start plugging things in. Now, some of them are blank because we haven't put in some numbers, and some of them are 0 because we haven't plugged in a bunch of numbers. But let's say you want to know, what's a really low touchdown percentage? Is 2% really high or really low? I don't know. You go over to the Outputs tab, and find Cam Ward's touchdown percentage, it'll show you where that would have ranked in the NFL last season. So this would have been worse than any other player in the NFL last season. 2% is extremely low, unrealistically low even. Then you can go back in and change that to a more realistic number. But let's say you change it to 6%. Now you're 6th highest in the NFL. Well, it's still at least realistic. It happened last year. But is Cam Ward going to have the 6th highest touchdown percentage in the league this year? Seems unlikely, right? So that's what these bottom numbers are. It automatically updates everything, and it's pulling these numbers from the third tab here, 2024 offense, NFL offense stats, which also shows you every team's touchdown percentage, interception percentage, sack percentage, scramble percentage. So you can go through and have like a reference point to make sure what you're doing feels somewhat realistic. Maybe you don't want it to be realistic. You don't have to do it realistic. You can do whatever you want here. And after you plug in numbers for everything, you got to put in a catch percentage, right? You got to put in a yards per catch average. You got to put in a receiving touchdown share. Whatever you want to do, you can plug these numbers in however you want. Once you get all these black boxes filled in, you go to your outputs tab and it'll tell you the Titans' total offense projection, the passing offense, the rushing offense, and each of the individual players. So there you have it. How to work the spreadsheet. Feel free to click that link in the description of this video and go off on your own. If you happen to do a projection, maybe download, file, download it as a PDF, or I guess you can't do it as an image. Anyway, I'd love to see your projections. So feel free to send them to me on Twitter at Titans Film Room. Would love to see what you guys cook up. And that'll do it for this video. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in. I already did the sign off. This is sort of a postscript to the video, so I'm not even going to say goodbye. I'm just going to let it end.
A Broadway sports media production.